Thank all of you for your commitment and your year of service. And thank the rest of you for realizing the potential that volunteerism is a passion that creates impact, and you are all change makers. Thank you, and God bless all of you as change makers. Thank you so much. Thank you. Now, it would be appropriate that our next speaker is an AmeriCorps alum, right? Okay, and she is. She is an educator, and she was an AmeriCorps alum from Teach for America, who served in the front lines in Ferguson, Missouri, and is a leader in youth activism. Please give your warm welcome to Brittany Packnett.
Last week, members of the House and Senate staged a sit-in, demanding action on gun control following the assault on Pulse. That same day, I sat on a panel just a few miles away at Gallaudet University. As I sat there in my mudcloth scarf and Zulu beads and a t-shirt that read "Racial Rabble-Rouser," I reminded those gathered that there probably would be no sit-in had there been no Ferguson uprising. I believe that young people on the streets reminded established leaders in the halls of power what courage looks like, and helped those who were our models of bravery resurrect a spirit of resistance in themselves. Of course, many that celebrated no bill, no break decried and denounced Ferguson. Many called us thugs, ignoring the fact that as peaceful protesters, we were gassed, shot at, and terrorized in our own neighborhoods. It was, in fact, my participation in the Ferguson protest that earned me that title, racial rabble-rouser, in the New York Post. And no, it was not meant as a compliment. But I took it as one. You see, those of us who choose this work, we are natural-born disruptors. When you choose service, you choose resistance. You choose to actively and unapologetically disrupt the status quo and work to build in its place equity and liberation. Ferguson was a service to this nation, to our democracy. It ripped the scales from our sleepy eyes, forcing us to stay woke. It snatched our comfort, forcing us to reckon with that legacy of systemic oppression that put a high school graduate named Michael Brown in a pool of his own blood for 4.5 hours as children passed by his lifeless body. Just 15 minutes from my home, in a neighborhood that housed many of my most cherished childhood memories, the most disgusting tragedy I've ever personally witnessed forced me to shed my own privilege and my belief that I was doing enough. You see, I work in social justice. I work in service. My job is in service of 20,000 low-income, mostly students of color across St. Louis who deserve an excellent education. As executive director of Teach for America in my hometown, my very life's work is to run in service of excellence and equity for every kid. Kids like Mike Brown, who graduated from a high school where we place teachers. But in that moment, under the hot, beaming sun on West Florissant Avenue, I realized Mike's diploma wasn't bulletproof. His education did not save him from what oppression had for him. So what did it all mean? Was all of our work in vain? What must we learn from the shedding of this blood in Ferguson and again in New York, in Baltimore, in Ohio? And because we made the choice to disrupt, to be of service, and to be proximal to the ground instead of comfortable in our privilege, the answers became clear. We must choose solidarity, not charity. When our 22 staff members and 50 area alums helped run a school in the Ferguson Library, when tanks, mounted rifles, and tear gas forced schools closed in the first week, our children weren't charity cases. Their parents weren't weak. Our community did not deserve pity, it deserved love. It deserved collective commitment as we stood alongside retired educators, parent volunteers, graduate students, and union members to give over 250 children a safe space and academic rigor. This moment, this movement has reminded me that charity is temporary, but solidarity creates permanent change. It's the difference between feeding 500 every week and organizing those fed 500 to get a grocery store built in a food desert, a grocery store that employs and doesn't gentrify that same fed 500. The answers became clear. Again, I say the answers became clear. If the most affected aren't leading, it's not a movement. Standing behind our students on West Florissant, I was tear gassed for the first of 3 times. And when an 8th grader, whose name I still don't know, cleared his eyes and walked back into the middle of the street, he gave me the courage to press forward. Movements for social change shouldn't be led by the most affected one day. They must be led by the empowered, marginalized people today. In whatever change we aspire to make, the agenda must be created by those most affected by the injustice. We, in turn, must seek permission, invitation, and guidance as to if and how we can help accomplish the vision. You see, the answers became clear. Without risk, there is no reward, so take protest everywhere. It can be easy, seductive even, to be so happy to be at the table that we forget to flip the table. The privilege we possess in this industry of service is not meant to be absorbed without use. It's meant to shift the reality so we can put ourselves out of business. When I sat on the president's policing task force, I wasn't there for a photo op. I was there to read the names of the fallen and remind us that Mike Brown, Tamir Rice, Sandra Bland, and so many more lost their lives to start this movement. When we sit at our board tables, we must force them to reflect the communities we claim to serve. When we decide the agenda, it must be based on the leadership of the most affected, employ language that's accessible by all, and affirm the identities of all involved. We in service are disruptors. We must disrupt until the very end, choosing to deliberately turn our disruption into sustainable change. And finally, the answers became clear. We will win, but only together. The whole world knows Mike Brown's name. But if all you see is a child who is no angel or a soul in need of saving, then you fail to see the humanity that demands we are equal partners in freedom. The power in this room is unstoppable if we choose it. If we dare to do what Sister Audrey said and Brother Muhammad Ali showed us and use our power in service of a collective vision of hope, of freedom, of liberation, of equity. Young people on the streets of Ferguson did all of us a service by seizing their power. It's time to follow their lead. We have nothing to lose but our chains. Thank you so much. Wow, thank you. Wish I could have Snapchatted that. I'm so happy to introduce our next speaker. She is the UK